Hello, I'm Sue Kelso with the Goodheart Artist Residency here in Goodheart, Michigan, and it's my pleasure today to introduce you to our writer in residence, Sam Stover. So Sam, can you give us a quick hello?
Hi, thank you so much for having me here today.
Oh, it's totally our pleasure. We're happy to have you here. So Sam is joining us for a 3-week stay in Goodheart to focus on his writing. And Sam is currently from Nashville, Tennessee, where he moved after completing his MFA at Hunter College in New York. He's currently writing and teaching at Volunteer State Community College in Nashville. His fiction has appeared in Crazy Horse, and he has received honorable mentions in Glimmer Train's New Writers Award and the Tennessee Williams Literary Festival Fiction Contest. Sam's fiction often focuses on queerness and gender, as well as on memory and its impacts on identity. So welcome, Sam. I want to introduce you also to Megan Klco-Kellner, who is the Indoor Education Manager at Frederick Meyer Gardens and Sculpture Park in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And she's also on our board of directors and a talented painter and poet and my daughter. So hello, Megan.
Hi, everybody. Excited to chat today.
All right, thank you. So Megan will be doing the interview with Sam. I'm just getting things started. So it's just our pleasure to be able to share what Sam's doing at the residency with our community. So before we get started though, I want to thank our funders by the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs, administered by Northwest Michigan Arts and Culture Network. So thank you to all our donors. We have a lot of local organizations and individual donors and volunteers, and we just really appreciate the support. So thank you. So now I will turn it over to Megan to start this interview. Thank you both for participating.
Thanks. Well, I'll start off by asking an easy question. Sam, how did you learn about the Goodheart Artist Residency program?
Yeah, so I learned about it while I was still a student at Hunter. So one of my mentors at Hunter College, Taya Obret, had suggested that I apply because a few other Hunter alums had also come to the Goodheart Artist Residency and just loved it, had a great experience, and got a lot done here. And so I decided to apply and very luckily was accepted.
Wonderful. And I know we kind of chatted about this a little bit before the call, but you mentioned that you hadn't seen Lake Michigan before. What was your impression?
So it's actually funny. A really early version of the novel that I'm working on while I'm here. I had it set as sort of this desert island Robinson Crusoe-esque kind of story. That was its like early inception. It's very different from that now, but I had envisioned it taking place on this sort of cold northern beach with a lot of like wind and rocks and things like that. And so whenever Sue and Bill took me down to the shore the first day I was here, I looked around and I was like, wow, this is like the very beginning idea that I had for this novel. So it's sort of like coming full circle, coming back to the beginning of the project.
Oh, how perfect. You get to have that like embodied experience.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
I just learning a little bit more about you. I'm wondering how you first knew that you wanted to be a writer. So we're kind of going way back.
Well, I mean, I guess like a lot of people, like when I was a kid, I would write like silly little like stories, mostly about unicorns or something silly like that. But then when I was in high school, I had two really phenomenal teachers. So one was my English teacher and one was my drama teacher. And I learned so much from them, not just about literature, but about character, about like what makes a person tick, like how a person's mannerisms or the way they dress can like reveal something about their personality or what's going on with them. And I think that's sort of at the point when I started really thinking about writing seriously and thinking about how to actually make a life as a writer.
Wonderful. How would you describe your writing style?
That's a good question. I often wonder that myself. I guess a word I might use would be like, I guess contemplative or digressive. I'm not as interested in sort of taking like the straight course from point A to point B, sort of get to the end of the story. I'm more interested in sort of like taking the scenic route, really getting into the character's head, their experiences. yeah, just kind of like getting very deep into the world itself.
Yeah. You mentioned kind of having a contemplative style of writing. Does that relate to sort of your process? Is there um, a certain time of day that's best for you to write, or tell us a little bit about what that process looks like for you?
Yeah, so I usually write first thing in the morning, really early in the morning, before I've spoken to another person. There's just something about coming out of a dreaming state that makes it a little bit easier to get into the work, like the imaginative world that you're trying to create, and kind of before the all of the worries and anxieties of like day-to-day life, before they're able to kind of get into your head to go straight to the fiction. And so I guess maybe that does have something to do with the style and giving it sort of like a meandering dreamlike quality at times.
Yeah, I love the idea of waking up and sort of being in that dreamlike state, or being able to access that world right away.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you mentioned dreams. Is that something that drives your writing, or is there a particular question or idea that drives your writing?
I wouldn't say that there's a question. I would say there's more of sort of an emotional state that I'm trying to get to, or trying to get the reader to get to. So, I mean, kind of going off of what we were saying before, one of the things that I'm interested in is kind of the experience of like what it's like to live inside of a mind, so consciousness. So, like in a lot of storytelling, you get sort of like a beginning, middle, of end. One thing happens, then the next, but I find that's not often how we actually experience our lives. So while, I mean, time is sort of passing out there, but we're always being bombarded with memories and associations in our own heads that sort of get lacquered over everything that's happening outside. And so what I really aim to do is sort of, without losing the momentum of the story, still capture that sort of ephemeral experience of what it's like to be living and thinking and doing things all kind of at the same time.
Wonderful. I love that. Yeah. Any influences that you want to tell us about? I know that you said you're really interested in the mind and consciousness. Are there like particular writers who have influenced your work?
Certainly. I guess sort right now, for better or worse, my my biggest influence is W.G. Sebald, who's the author of Austerlitz, is the novel that most people know him, associate him with. He's somebody whose work is very concerned with memory and history, and something that I sort of admire about his writing is the way he's in this almost dreamlike fashion able to sort of leap from one subject to the next, and things that have absolutely no connection to each other on their surface, but when he puts them next to each other, they suddenly make so much sense. Like somehow like the history of the herring, and then like Napoleon's wars, and then the destruction of forests on, you know, on England. Somehow he puts them right together. And it seems like it should be like the most dull thing you've ever read in your life. But he somehow imbues it with such luminosity and propulsion. It's like you're reading a thriller, like you can't put it down.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Oh yeah, wonderful. Um, I know hearing a little bit, more about your work and getting more familiar with it. I keep thinking about, this process of being at the residency and the influence that might have on what you're working on. So I'm curious just to kind of hear generally, how being at the artist residency has affected your work, or affected your process.
Um, well, it's allowed me to get a lot more done than I usually am able to get to in a normal day at home, which has been really wonderful. So again, just sort of getting up early and getting straight to it, and then being able to kind of sustain that that propulsion throughout the day. Because I mean, I'm here by myself. There's no like dog asking to go outside. There's nobody interrupting. Um, Not that that's always a bad thing, but no, it's been really productive so far.
Wonderful. Could you tell us a little bit more about the project that you're working on? I know you mentioned it right in the beginning a little bit.
Yeah, so right now I'm working on a novel, and it's it's about a trans guy who is on a trip back home to his rural hometown to kind of help out with his father, who's suffering from dementia. And there's a moment in the story where his father like doesn't quite recognize him and then starts to tell him stories that he's never heard before. And so it's sort of about discovering the history of one's family lineage, but on the other hand, it's also about discovering his queer lineage as well, because throughout the novel, he sort of encounters a variety of people who tell him stories or who sort of turn him on to queer figures, both in recent history and in the distant past, that he's not related to by blood, but still sort of they're part of like the genetic makeup of who he is as an individual. And so, yeah, it's sort of about the nature of identity, not as this sort of unitary, easy to sum up thing, but as sort of this network of associations and affinities that kind of go into one's concept of oneself.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the idea of exploring the lineage book. Like, you have your sort of family and your family history, but then, all of these other people that influence you or maybe a part of your community or part of your life in different ways.
Totally. Yeah, it's like two different family trees that are both are just as important.
Yeah. The idea of describing that as a lineage is really interesting to me. Cool. Um, Kind of moving into a different vein here. What's on your nightstand? What are you reading right now?
Yeah. So right now I have two books on my nightstand. One I just finished, which was Sigrid Nunez's newest book, What Are You Going Through? And then also Marilyn Robinson's newest book, Jack, which I'm about halfway through. And they're both really good.
Anything that you want to share that's particularly appealing about those two?
I I think for me, I was really excited to read Marilyn Robinson's newest book. So during the pandemic, I found myself unable to read for like a couple of months there. But then when I started reading Marilyn Robinson's work. And for some reason, that's just what that's what my mind could focus on. Before that, the only thing I couldn't really focus on anything more sophisticated than like the Tiger King. Like it was just, yeah. But I really like, I love I don't know if you're familiar with her novels. They all sort of take place in the same town. But I've been very intrigued by the character of Jack, who sort of like flits in and out of the rest of the novels. And then this book is just about him. So it's kind of finally getting to that one character that's sort of been the mystery at the heart of this town the whole time. So it's really exciting.
Cool. I'll have to look that author up. I'm not familiar with their work. Yeah, I
Mhm.
can totally relate to the idea of like pandemic and just not being able to. I was surprised to find at the beginning that I couldn't even like read a poem, like a short poem was like too much attention and focus
Yeah,
for
yeah.
everything that's going on.
Those months are just a blur still. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. A benefit to have some of that time now to have that really focused work for sure.
yeah. Make up for lost time.
I think we've kind of touched on this in a couple of different ways, but it's a good question, which is what's a takeaway that you hope that readers get from your writing?
Um, I don't know that I've actually thought about my agenda that much. I guess one of the things that I hope for is just, I guess, to have more representation out there, like more queer representation, more representation of all kinds. I think a lot of times when there aren't that many people like you that you can see in the literary canon or on TV, then the ones that are there sort of get held up as like the experience. So like this one story is like the trans experience or the gay experience. And so then people kind of start to think like, well, this must be like what all trans people go through, what all gay people go through. But then when you have a whole lot of voices, then you can sort of start to see what a wide variety of experiences there are, that there's not just one way to be trans or queer or non-binary or anything. And I think we're sort of starting to see more variety in queer stories being told now, but there can always be a lot more.
Yeah, I love that. It kind of goes back to what you were talking about in terms of the complexity of the identity in your character, that nobody is like a single part of who they are.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
You get to kind of see that richness.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else that you want to share with people?
Um, I want to say thank you to the Goodheart Artist Residency for having me here in this amazingly beautiful space and giving me the time to work on this. It's been such a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam, so much. It's been
Yeah.
really a pleasure to hear a little bit more about your work.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. This is great.
Okay, can I jump back in here for a minute?
Sure.
Okay. I have to say this was wonderful. It was nice to hear more about your work, and I think your last message about, having more of an, the trans or, more diversity and identity out there is a wonderful thing. So, but I also want to say, early on, you said you were luckily accepted by the Goodheart Artist Residency. There's very little luck involved. We had 157 applicants to the program. Our jurors absolutely loved your writing. We had 3 jurors that reviewed the writers. And so this is you and about you and your talent. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. So anything else from anybody? Otherwise, we'll call it good. Wrap it up. All right. So thank you very much, Megan. Thank you very much, Sam. I appreciate your time and the information you provided. So thank you so much. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.